What if I told you that some of history's greatest cities aren't lost at all? They're still here, hidden beneath forests, buried under quiet villages, sleeping beneath desert sands, or standing in plain sight where almost no one thinks to look. Tonight, we'll uncover forgotten capitals that ruled ancient kingdoms, underground cities carved beneath ordinary streets, Roman fortresses frozen in time, mysterious temples hidden in remote mountains, and abandoned settlements that have remained silent for thousands of years. These aren't legends. They aren't myths. Every place you'll see tonight is real, discovered by archaeologists, and each one still holds questions that history cannot fully answer. So before we begin, take a moment to subscribe. And as always, if you subscribe before the journey starts, you might just receive 7 years of good luck. At the very least, you'll never miss another ancient mystery. Now dim the lights. Get comfortable, and together, let's journey across the forgotten corners of our world. The fortress uncovered when a reservoir dried up completely. For more than half a century, it slept beneath the surface of a quiet Spanish reservoir, hidden from the world, hidden from history. Fish drifted above its stones. Boats crossed the water without realizing what rested below. Then the water began to disappear, week after week, meter by meter. As one of Spain's worst droughts tightened its grip on the landscape, something extraordinary emerged from the receding shoreline. A circle of towering granite stones. Ancient. Weathered. Standing exactly where they had stood for nearly 5,000 years. The monument became an overnight sensation. Many called it Spain's own Stonehenge. But its true story is far older, far stranger, and far quieter. The site is known as the Dolmen of Guadalperol, located in Spain's Extremadura region near the Tagus River, where prehistoric communities built one of the Iberian Peninsula's most remarkable megalithic monuments thousands of years before written history ever reached these lands. Back then, there was no reservoir, only a broad river valley, forests, open grasslands, and small farming communities beginning to shape a new way of life. The monument stood at the heart of their world, long before the modern one arrived. The dolmen was first documented in the 1920s by the German archaeologist Hugo Obermeier, who carefully surveyed the monument while studying prehistoric settlements throughout western Spain. His photographs proved invaluable. His drawings preserved details, because only a few decades later, everything changed. A massive dam was constructed across the Tagus River. The valley slowly flooded. Villages disappeared beneath rising water. Ancient roads vanished. The dolmen vanished with them. History slipped beneath the surface. For decades, the monument remained almost entirely underwater. Only during rare periods of exceptionally low water could a few stones briefly emerge before disappearing once again. Most people forgot it was there. The reservoir became part of everyday life. The monument became part of memory, quietly waiting beneath the waves. Then came the drought. As rainfall declined and the reservoir reached historically low levels, the water retreated farther than it had in generations. The lakebed cracked beneath the summer sun. Mud gave way to stone. One granite pillar appeared, then another. Soon, an entire circle emerged from the earth, exactly where prehistoric builders had left it. The landscape seemed to turn back time. Archaeologists believe the Dolmen of Guadalperol was constructed between 3000 and 2000 BC during the late Neolithic or early Bronze Age, making it older than many of Europe's most famous ancient monuments. Its builders left no written language, no names, no kings, only stone, carefully chosen, carefully arranged, still standing after thousands of years. Originally, the monument consisted of more than 100 upright granite slabs forming a long stone corridor leading toward a central burial chamber, where important members of the community were likely laid to rest. But this was never simply a grave. Many researchers believe ceremonies also took place here. Seasonal gatherings, ritual processions, moments of remembrance, perhaps even celebrations tied to the changing sky. The monument may have united both the living and the dead. One stone continues to puzzle archaeologists more than any other. Its surface bears a long, winding carving, a serpent-like design. Some researchers believe it represents the nearby Tagus River. Others think it marked a sacred pathway. A few suggest it symbolized something spiritual that has long been forgotten. No one knows for certain. The carving remains. Its meaning does not. Another mystery lies in the monument's original setting. Today, visitors see it rising from cracked mud beside a shrinking reservoir. But 5,000 years ago, the landscape looked entirely different. The river flowed naturally. Dense woodland surrounded the valley. The monument overlooked a living world, not an artificial lake. Everything around it has changed, except the stones themselves. The monument's unexpected return also created a difficult dilemma. Every year it remains exposed. The granite suffers damage from changing temperatures, wind, and erosion. Yet allowing the reservoir to cover it again protects the monument while hiding it from study. Some archaeologists argue it should be relocated to safer ground. Others insist it should never be moved. The debate continues. Protection or preservation in place. Neither choice feels complete. Standing among the stones today feels strangely unreal. The silence is overwhelming. Water stains remain visible high on the granite pillars. Birds circle overhead. The dry earth stretches across what was once a lake. It is easy to forget that only months earlier these stones lay beneath several meters of water. Waiting, watching, patiently enduring. Perhaps that is what makes the dolmen of Guadalperral so unforgettable. It was not discovered by archaeologists digging into forgotten ground. It returned because nature briefly revealed what modern engineering had hidden, a monument older than recorded history, emerging only when the water stepped aside. Its builders could never have imagined reservoirs, or droughts, or satellites photographing their work from above. Yet their monument survived them all, still standing, still silent, still asking the same question it has asked for 5,000 years. How many more forgotten worlds are still waiting beneath the water, unseen until history decides to reveal them once again? Caveware archaeologists found Europe's oldest wooden structure. For hundreds of thousands of years, a waterfall thundered through this remote African valley. Rain came, rivers rose, forests grew, generations disappeared. The water never stopped flowing. Hidden beneath layers of ancient river sediment, something waited in complete darkness. Not gold, not a forgotten tomb, not a lost city. Just two enormous pieces of wood, locked together with astonishing precision. When archaeologists finally uncovered them, they realized they were looking at something no one expected to survive. The oldest known wooden structure ever discovered. Older than farming, older than pottery, older than our own species had once been thought capable of building. It changed an entire chapter of human history. The discovery was made near Colombo Falls, a spectacular waterfall on the border of present-day Zambia and Tanzania, where one of Africa's oldest river systems has quietly preserved traces of prehistoric life for hundreds of thousands of years. The waterfall never sleeps. Mist fills the air. The ground remains damp throughout the seasons. That constant moisture became history's greatest protector. Archaeologists have studied Colombo Falls since the middle of the 20th century because stone tools and ancient occupation layers suggested that early humans had returned to this valley again and again over immense stretches of time. Generation followed generation. The river provided water. The forest provided shelter. Life continued, long before written history, long before civilization. Then came a remarkable discovery. Buried beneath waterlogged sediment, researchers uncovered two large logs carefully shaped and joined together by a deliberate notch cut into the wood, allowing one timber to rest securely across the other. This was no fallen tree, no accident of nature. Someone had planned it. Someone had built it, hundreds of thousands of years ago. Scientific dating placed the structure at roughly 476,000 years old, an astonishing age, far older than the appearance of modern Homo sapiens. At that time, another human ancestor likely walked these forests, perhaps Homo heidelbergensis, perhaps another closely related species. No one knows for certain. The builders left no names, only wood, and extraordinary skill. For generations, archaeologists believed wood almost never survived long enough to enter the archaeological record. It decays quickly. It disappears. Stone remains. Wood usually does not. Colombo Falls changed that understanding completely because the permanently waterlogged ground prevented oxygen from reaching the buried timber, preserving it for nearly 500,000 years. Nature became the perfect archive, patiently protecting what people could not. What exactly the structure supported remains uncertain. Some researchers believe it formed part of a raised platform built above wet ground. Others suggest it served as the foundation of a simple shelter. A few think it may have strengthened a riverside walkway. Every theory fits some of the evidence. None explains everything. The wood keeps its silence. The discovery revealed something even more profound. The builders were not simply gathering branches or using whatever nature provided. They intentionally selected large trees, cut them, shaped them, carved precise joints, then fitted the pieces together. Planning, measurement, construction. These are remarkably sophisticated behaviors, much earlier than many scientists once imagined. Stone tools recovered nearby show clear signs of woodworking, sharp cutting edges, wear patterns, careful craftsmanship. The tools and the timber tell the same story. People understood wood, perhaps far better than archaeology had ever appreciated. Entire structures may once have existed across prehistoric landscapes. Almost all of them vanished. This one survived, only because the river refused to let it decay. Researchers continue debating what this discovery means for our understanding of early human intelligence. Some believe complex construction developed much earlier than previously thought. Others urge caution, arguing that one remarkable site cannot represent every prehistoric community. Perhaps both views contain some truth. History rarely changes all at once. Sometimes it shifts with a single discovery, a single piece of wood. Standing beside Colombo Falls today, it is impossible not to notice the constant roar of the water. The mist settles gently across the rocks. The forest feels timeless. The waterfall looks much as it always has. The builders would still recognize it. The river has changed very little, only the world around it. Perhaps that is the greatest mystery of Colombo Falls. Not how old the structure is. Science has answered that. But how many other wooden buildings once stood across ancient landscapes before time quietly erased them forever? The earth preserved this one by chance. How many others disappeared without leaving a trace? The waterfall continues to flow. The valley continues to watch. Its oldest secrets carried beneath the sound of rushing water. Waiting. Patiently. For the next discovery that reminds us just how much of humanity's earliest story still remains hidden beneath our feet. The underground chamber sealed since the Bronze Age. Beneath the ruins of an ancient palace in western Syria, a staircase disappeared into complete darkness. Stone by stone, archaeologists carefully cleared the entrance. The air was still. The silence was absolute. No one had entered this place for more than 3,000 years. Dust covered every step. The doorway remained sealed. What waited below was not another empty room, but an underground royal chamber, untouched since the Bronze Age. A place where kings and queens had been laid to rest while entire civilizations rose and disappeared above them. Today, it is known as the Royal Hypogeum of Katna, one of the most extraordinary tombs ever discovered in the ancient Near East. More than 3,500 years ago, the city of Katna stood among the greatest kingdoms of Bronze Age Syria, controlling important trade routes that connected Mesopotamia, Anatolia, the Mediterranean coast, and the great kingdoms of Egypt. Caravans arrived daily. Merchants crossed its gates. Diplomats carried royal messages. The city prospered. Its palace reflected that success. The royal palace itself covered nearly 2 hectares, making it one of the largest Bronze Age palaces ever excavated in the region. Its halls were enormous. Its courtyards crowded with officials. Its storerooms overflowed with valuable goods. Kings ruled from these chambers. Foreign ambassadors walked these corridors. Everything suggested wealth and power. Yet the palace concealed a remarkable secret. Deep beneath its floors, builders carved an underground burial complex directly into the bedrock, creating a hidden hypogeum connected to the royal residence by a carefully constructed passageway. The entrance remained inside the palace, invisible from outside, known only to a select few. The dead rested beneath the living, separated by only stone. In 2002, archaeologists uncovered the long-buried staircase leading into the underground complex. As they descended, they realized something extraordinary. Unlike many royal tombs looted during antiquity, this chamber had remained largely undisturbed since the destruction of the palace around the 14th century BC. Time had stopped. The silence remained intact. The chamber had simply waited. Inside, researchers discovered hundreds of objects scattered throughout the burial chambers. Gold ornaments, ivory carvings, fine pottery, jewelry, decorated drinking vessels, alabaster containers. The remains of elaborate funeral offerings still surrounded the royal dead. Every object rested exactly where ancient mourners had placed it. 3,000 years earlier, Human remains belonging to multiple members of the royal family were also found within the hypogeum. Unlike single burials, this underground complex served as a dynastic resting place used across generations. Kings, queens, princes, princesses, one family, remembered together. The chamber became more than a tomb. It became a place of royal memory. One remarkable feature continues to intrigue archaeologists. The burial chambers contain stone benches, offering platforms, and carefully designed spaces where rituals honoring deceased rulers likely continued long after the original burials had taken place. The dead were not forgotten. They remained part of royal life. Ceremonies returned here, again and again. The chamber stayed connected to the palace above. Researchers also uncovered evidence that food and drink were regularly brought into the hypogeum during ancestor rituals. Large storage jars, animal bones, ceremonial vessels. These discoveries suggest the living continued visiting their royal ancestors for generations. Death was not considered an ending, only another stage of existence. The kings remained present, even in silence. The destruction of Katna may have saved the chamber. Around the 14th century BC, invading forces devastated the palace, causing ceilings and walls to collapse. The entrance became buried beneath rubble. Future looters never reached the royal tomb. Ironically, catastrophe became preservation. The ruins protected what armies could not. Patiently, for millennia. Walking through the hypogeum today is unlike entering most archaeological sites. The stone corridors remain cool. The air feels heavy. The chambers are dimly lit. Every step echoes softly against the ancient walls. It is impossible not to feel the weight of time. The kings are gone. Their city has vanished. Yet beneath the ruined palace, they still rest where their descendants left them. Perhaps that is the greatest mystery of Katna. Not the treasures found within its royal tomb, remarkable as they are, but how an entire underground world survived untouched while the kingdom above disappeared from history. Empires collapsed. Trade routes shifted, palaces crumbled, the hypogeum endured, waiting beneath the earth, watching in silence, keeping the memories of a forgotten royal family sealed beneath stone for more than 3,000 years, and reminding us that sometimes history's greatest discoveries are not hidden behind locked doors. They are hidden beneath the very floors where ancient kings once walked. The fortress that protected an ancient emerald mine. Deep within Egypt's eastern desert, where jagged mountains rise from endless stretches of barren stone, the ruins of a lonely fortress still overlook a landscape that seems almost impossible to survive. No rivers flow here, no forests offer shade, only rock, sand, and silence. Yet nearly 2,000 years ago, this desolate valley became one of the most valuable places in the Roman Empire. Not because of gold, not because of grain, but because of emeralds. Brilliant green gemstones hidden deep within the mountains. Gemstones so prized that emperors guarded them with soldiers, walls, and watchtowers. Today, the fortress still stands, watching over mines that have long fallen silent. This is Sikate, the forgotten city of Egypt's emeralds. Far from the fertile Nile Valley, the mountains surrounding Sikate contain one of the ancient world's richest emerald deposits, attracting miners, merchants, and rulers for centuries before eventually becoming the Roman Empire's principal source of the precious green stone. The journey was brutal. Water was scarce. Summer heat could become unbearable. Yet people came, again and again, because beneath these mountains waited extraordinary wealth. The emerald mines were first worked during the Ptolemaic kingdom after the conquests of Alexander the Great, but they reached their greatest importance under Roman rule, when demand for luxury gemstones spread throughout the empire. Emeralds decorated jewelry, royal gifts, ceremonial objects, symbols of power. Every stone carried immense value. Every mine demanded protection. To safeguard this isolated treasure, the Romans transformed Sikate into a permanent settlement complete with defensive walls, guard posts, workshops, storage buildings, temples, and living quarters for miners and soldiers stationed deep within the desert. It became more than a mining camp. It became a frontier fortress, built to protect a single resource, one more valuable than many could imagine. The emeralds themselves were extracted from narrow tunnels carved directly into the surrounding mountains. Some passages stretched surprisingly deep into the rock. Others remained barely large enough for a person to crawl through. Dark, confined. dangerous. Miners worked by the light of small oil lamps. The mountain slowly surrendered its treasures, stone by stone. Modern archaeologists have identified hundreds of ancient mining galleries scattered across the landscape, revealing that the search for emeralds continued for centuries despite the harsh climate and extraordinary logistical challenges of living so far from permanent water sources. Everything had to be transported. Food, tools, timber, water. Nothing came easily, yet the settlement endured, because the emeralds were worth it. Among the ruins stands a remarkable stone temple dedicated to local and imperial religious traditions, reminding archaeologists that even in one of the Roman Empire's most remote outposts, spiritual life remained closely connected to daily survival. Workers prayed here, soldiers gathered here, travelers paused before entering the mines. Faith accompanied hardship, just as surely as the desert did. One enduring mystery surrounds the settlement's eventual decline. The emerald veins did not simply disappear overnight. Some researchers believe production gradually became less profitable as the richest deposits were exhausted. Others point to changing trade routes, political instability, or shifting fashions in the Roman world. Perhaps every explanation holds part of the truth. The fortress offers no answer, only ruins. Another puzzle continues to intrigue archaeologists. Many mining tunnels remain only partially explored. Some collapsed naturally centuries ago. Others may still conceal untouched sections hidden behind fallen rock. No one knows exactly how extensive the ancient underground network once became. The mountains continue keeping their secrets, patiently. Stone has always been good at waiting. Walking through Sikate today feels almost surreal. The silence is overwhelming. The desert wind moves through abandoned walls. The watchtowers still overlook empty valleys. No caravans arrive. No miners descend into the shafts. The emeralds remain hidden beneath the mountains, just as they always have. The fortress still watches, even with nothing left to defend. Perhaps that is the greatest mystery of Sikate. Not how people found emeralds in one of the harshest landscapes on Earth. History explains that. But how an entire city devoted to extraordinary wealth could fade into obscurity while the desert quietly reclaimed its streets. The mines remain. The fortress still stands. The mountains still guard their green treasures beneath layers of ancient stone. Watching, waiting, refusing to reveal every secret, and reminding us that some of history's richest places eventually become its quietest, where only the wind remembers the fortunes once hidden beneath the desert floor. The mountain where archaeologists found hundreds of stone thrones. High above the valleys of central Turkey, an isolated mountain rises from the windswept landscape, its weathered cliffs carved with monuments so unusual that even today they leave archaeologists searching for answers. Not a palace, not a fortress, but stone seats, hundreds of them, some carved into towering cliffs, others facing open valleys, many overlooking nothing at all. For centuries, they have waited in silence, watching the changing seasons, watching passing civilizations, never revealing exactly why they were created. This is the world surrounding the Aslantash Phrygian monument, a forgotten ceremonial landscape unlike almost anywhere else in the ancient world. More than 27 centuries ago, this region formed part of the powerful Phrygian kingdom, a civilization remembered today through legends of King Midas, whose mythical golden touch became one of history's most enduring stories. Yet the real Phrygians left behind something even more remarkable. Not treasure, not vast cities, but mountains transformed into sacred stone. Across the landscape, entire cliffs became monuments. Nature and architecture merged together, almost seamlessly. The Aslantash Monument, whose name means lion stone, is one of the finest surviving examples of this tradition, carved directly into solid volcanic rock and guarded by imposing lion reliefs that have watched the surrounding valleys for nearly 3,000 years. The lions remain, their faces weathered, their bodies scarred by time, still standing, still watching. Few monuments feel so alive despite their silence. Yet Aslantash is only one part of a much larger mystery. Archaeologists working throughout the ancient Phrygian highlands have documented hundreds of carved stone thrones, benches, niches, platforms, and ceremonial seats scattered across nearby mountains and valleys. Some appear carefully aligned, others seem isolated, hidden among rocks, overlooking cliffs, facing the sunrise, or the empty sky. No single pattern explains them all. Many of these stone thrones are carved directly from the living bedrock rather than assembled from separate blocks, suggesting that the mountains themselves held sacred significance for the people who created them. The rock became architecture. The landscape became ritual. Nothing was separated. Everything belonged together, perhaps intentionally. Unlike royal palaces, these stone seats show little evidence of ordinary daily life. Very few domestic objects have been recovered nearby. There are no kitchens, no crowded streets, no marketplaces, only carved platforms, sacred spaces, and silence. The mountains still seem to be waiting. Some archaeologists believe the thrones were used during religious ceremonies dedicated to Cybele, the great mother goddess worshipped throughout Phrygia, whose cult often emphasized mountains, caves, fertility, and the natural world rather than enclosed temple buildings. The theory fits much of the landscape. Sacred cliffs, natural springs, open skies, places where Earth itself became a sanctuary. Perhaps worship happened here, without walls, without roofs. Others think the seats served as ceremonial gathering places where priests, rulers, or community leaders performed seasonal rituals connected to agriculture, kingship, or important festivals. The mountains would have provided dramatic settings, visible from great distances, easy to remember, impossible to ignore. Stone preserves memory remarkably well. A few researchers suggest another possibility. Some of the carved thrones may never have been meant for people at all. Instead, they could have symbolized invisible divine presences, empty seats, reserved for gods, places where no human was expected to remain for long. It remains only a theory, but an intriguing one. The monuments themselves offer surprisingly few written clues. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, lengthy inscriptions are rare here, leaving archaeologists to interpret the landscape mainly through architecture, symbolism, and careful excavation rather than detailed historical records. The stones speak quietly, if they speak at all. Their language survives mostly through shape, not words. Even the famous Aslantash monument continues to raise unanswered questions. Why were lions chosen as guardians? Why carve elaborate facades into remote cliffs instead of constructing conventional temples? And why are similar sacred features spread across such a vast mountain landscape instead of concentrated in a single ceremonial center? No one knows for certain. The mountain refuses easy answers. Standing among these monuments today is a strangely peaceful experience. Wind moves gently across the plateau. Wild grasses sway between ancient carvings. The stone thrones remain exactly where their creators left them, empty, patient, watching valleys that have changed countless times since the Phrygians disappeared. Empires rose, empires fell, the mountains remained. Perhaps that is why these forgotten sanctuaries continue to fascinate archaeologists. Not because they reveal everything about the Phrygians, but because they reveal so little. The landscape still guards its oldest ceremonies. The stone seats still wait for visitors who never come. And somewhere among these quiet mountains, hundreds of ancient thrones continue watching the horizon, keeping the secrets of a vanished kingdom hidden within the living rock itself. The ancient workshop that produced the world's earliest purple dye. Along the Mediterranean coast of northern Israel, waves have broken against the same rocky shoreline for thousands of years. The sea is calm. The cliffs are quiet. Nothing about the landscape suggests it once produced one of the ancient world's most valuable treasures. Not gold, not silver, not precious gems, but color. A deep royal purple. So rare, so expensive, that emperors, kings, and high priests reserved it for themselves alone. For centuries, no one knew exactly where much of this legendary dye had been made. Then archaeologists uncovered an ancient workshop buried beneath layers of stone and sand. The discovery changed everything. This is Tel Shikmona, the world's earliest known large-scale workshop for producing royal purple dye. More than 3,000 years ago, Tel Shikmona stood on a narrow stretch of coastline overlooking the eastern Mediterranean, where traders, fishermen, and craftsmen built a thriving settlement perfectly positioned between Egypt, Phoenicia, and the kingdoms of the Levant. Ships passed constantly. Merchants exchanged goods. Ideas crossed the sea. The shoreline became a crossroads, small in size, enormous in importance. For generations, historians knew that the famous purple dye of antiquity came from marine snails belonging to the Murex family, but the actual places where this extraordinary color was produced remained surprisingly elusive. Ancient writers described it. Kings wore it. Empires traded it. Yet the workshops themselves seem to have disappeared, almost completely. Excavations at Tel Shikmona revealed something remarkable. Rows of stone vats, industrial work areas, drainage channels, processing installations, and countless fragments of crushed sea snails. Not hundreds, not thousands, but mountains of shells. The evidence pointed toward continuous production carried out on a scale never before documented for this period. Researchers believe the workshop operated between the 11th and 6th centuries BC, producing the famous purple pigment that later became known throughout the Mediterranean as one of the greatest symbols of wealth and royal authority. Every batch demanded patience, thousands of shellfish, careful preparation, exact timing. The process was slow, the reward extraordinary. Creating the dye was anything but pleasant. Workers collected marine snails from nearby rocky shores before carefully extracting a tiny gland hidden inside each shell. The glands were crushed, fermented, heated, then exposed to sunlight. Only then did the remarkable transformation begin. Yellow became green. Green became blue. Blue slowly deepened into an intense royal purple. Nature performed the final step. Almost like magic. One robe required astonishing amounts of raw material. Some estimates suggest that thousands of snails were needed to produce enough dye for a single finely colored garment. The smell was overwhelming, the labor exhausting, the finished color priceless. Every drop represented immense effort. The purple became a symbol, not simply a pigment. Perhaps the greatest surprise came from the workshop itself. Rather than small household production, Tel Shikmona shows clear evidence of organized industrial manufacturing, with carefully arranged installations that allowed large quantities of dye to be processed repeatedly over many generations. This was no village craft. It was an industry. Planned. Refined. Efficient. Archaeologists also discovered traces of purple pigment preserved inside ancient pottery vessels, allowing chemical analysis to confirm that the workshop truly produced the prestigious dye described in historical sources. The color survived, long after the fabric disappeared, long after the workers were forgotten. Even chemistry remembered. Some researchers believe Tel Shikmona may have supplied royal courts across the eastern Mediterranean. Others suggest several coastal centers shared production while specializing in slightly different techniques. The evidence continues to grow. The debate continues with it. No single workshop explains the entire story, but this one explains far more than historians once believed. Standing beside the ruins today, the Mediterranean stretches endlessly toward the horizon. Waves still strike the same rocks where ancient workers once gathered shellfish. Seabirds circle overhead. The workshops lie silent. No fires burn beneath the vats. No craftsmen stir the dye. Only the sea continues its timeless rhythm, as though nothing has changed. Perhaps that is the greatest mystery of Tel Shikmona. Not how ancient people created one of history's most valuable colors. Science has finally answered much of that question. But how a humble coastal workshop quietly produced a dye that became the color of emperors, kingdoms, and sacred authority across the ancient world. The kings have vanished. The robes have faded. The purple remains legendary. And beside the Mediterranean shore, the ancient workshop still waits, patiently, watching the waves that once carried its priceless color to every corner of the known world. The ancient city revealed after centuries beneath a salt lake. For centuries, people avoided this lonely mountain valley, not because of wild animals, not because of war, but because of silence. Stone buildings covered the hillside, hundreds of them, each with a tiny window facing the valley below. From a distance, they looked like an abandoned village. Up close, they revealed something far more extraordinary. An entire city of the dead, hidden among the mountains, forgotten by much of the world, waiting for history to return. Today, this remarkable place is known as Dargavs, often called the City of the Dead, one of the most mysterious archaeological landscapes in the Caucasus. High in the Republic of North Ossetia, nestled within the rugged mountains of southern Russia, Dargavs overlooks a quiet valley where snow covers the peaks for much of the year and narrow rivers carve their way through ancient stone. The mountains protected it. The isolation preserved it. Generations came and went. The crypts remained, watching, patiently. Archaeologists believe most of the stone mausoleums were constructed between the 14th and 18th centuries, although the valley itself had been occupied long before these remarkable burial structures appeared across the hillside. Families returned here, generation after generation, building new crypts beside older ones. The cemetery slowly became a stone city, one unlike any other. More than 90 stone crypts still survive today. Some stand alone. Others cluster together along narrow pathways. Each was carefully built from local stone, topped with steep slate roofs designed to withstand the harsh mountain climate for centuries. Simple architecture, remarkable endurance. The valley became a monument, not to kings, but to ordinary families. Inside many of the chambers, archaeologists discovered wooden coffins unlike those found elsewhere in Europe. Several were shaped like small boats, an unusual design, especially in a region with no nearby sea. Why boats? No one knows for certain. Some researchers believe they symbolized a final journey into the next world. Others suggest they reflected local beliefs now lost to history. The coffins remain. Their meaning does not. Human remains, clothing, pottery, tools, coins, and personal belongings were found remarkably well preserved within many of the crypts, thanks to the valley's cool, dry mountain climate that slowed the natural process of decay. The air became a guardian. Time moved more slowly here. History survived, quietly. Local legends grew around the cemetery over the centuries. Some claimed anyone entering the city of the dead would never return. Others believed the valley was watched by restless spirits protecting their ancestors. Whether anyone truly believed the stories is impossible to know. But they served a purpose. Few people disturbed the site. The silence remained unbroken. Modern archaeological research has revealed that the cemetery reflects a unique response to repeated outbreaks of disease and the realities of life in isolated mountain communities. Rather than burying loved ones beneath the ground, families often place them inside carefully built stone crypts where generations could rest together. The dead remained close. The living remembered. The valley connected both. One mystery continues to fascinate researchers. Many crypts appear remarkably uniform despite being built across several centuries. Builders followed shared traditions, shared measurements, shared ideas, yet almost nothing was written down. The architecture became the language. The stones carried the memory. Standing in Dargavs today feels unlike visiting almost any other archaeological site. The mountain wind moves gently between the stone roofs. Wild grass grows along ancient pathways. The valley is almost perfectly silent. The crypts seem less like ruins than quiet homes, still waiting, still watching, still guarding the memories of those within. Perhaps that is the greatest mystery of Dargavs, not why people built a city for the dead. Many civilizations did the same. But why this isolated mountain valley preserved its ancient landscape so completely, while so many others disappeared beneath expanding towns and changing history? The mountains still surround it. The stone crypts still face the valley. The silence remains almost unchanged, patiently, endlessly, reminding us that some of history's most remarkable cities were never built for the living at all, but for the generations they hoped would never be forgotten. The ancient city carved into a vertical cliff. High above the modern city of Cagliari, an enormous limestone hill rises from the Mediterranean landscape. From a distance, it appears untouched, a rugged cliff, covered with shrubs and pale stone. But hidden inside the rock are thousands of chambers, doorways cut into vertical walls, passages disappearing into darkness, entire streets of tombs carved directly into the mountain itself. It is not a fortress, not a palace, not even a city for the living. It is a city built for the dead, one of the largest ancient necropolises anywhere in the Mediterranean. This is Cuicul, a remarkable landscape where generations chose to carve memory into stone. More than 25 centuries ago, Phoenician sailors crossed the Mediterranean and established thriving trading settlements along the coast of Sardinia, transforming the island into an important crossroads between Europe, North Africa, and the ancient Near East. Ships arrived daily. Merchants exchanged goods. Cultures blended. The settlement flourished. And above it, the limestone hill slowly became sacred. Beginning around the 6th century BC, the Phoenicians started carving deep burial chambers into the soft limestone cliffs of Cuicul, creating an extraordinary necropolis that continued expanding under later Carthaginian rule. Each tomb required careful planning. Stone was removed by hand. Vertical shafts descended into the earth. Side chambers opened below. The mountain slowly became hollow, room by room, generation after generation. Today, archaeologists estimate that more than 1,000 tombs were once scattered across the hill, making Tuvik's the largest Punic necropolis ever discovered anywhere in the Mediterranean world. Some tombs are simple, others are elaborate. Many remain unexplored. The hill still hides countless stories beneath its surface. Patiently, quietly. The entrance to most tombs begins with a narrow vertical shaft cut directly into the rock. Several meters below, carefully carved chambers open into cool underground rooms where families laid their loved ones to rest. The design was practical, elegant, remarkably durable. The mountain itself became the monument. No separate buildings were needed. Inside many burial chambers, archaeologists uncovered pottery, jewelry, glass vessels, carved amulets, coins, and traces of painted decoration, revealing that these underground spaces were prepared with great care rather than serving as simple places of burial. Death held meaning. Memory mattered. Every object reflected respect. The chambers remained part of family history, long after burial. One of the site's most fascinating discoveries is the tomb of Urias, named after a beautifully painted Egyptian cobra symbol found decorating one of the burial chambers. The artwork reflects something remarkable. Ideas traveled. Beliefs crossed the sea. Egyptian influence reached Sardinia, not through conquest, but through trade. The Mediterranean connected worlds. Researchers continue studying how Phoenician and Carthaginian religious beliefs shaped the design of these remarkable tombs. Some chambers contain carved benches. Others feature carefully positioned niches. A few include symbolic architectural details whose meaning remains uncertain. Perhaps they served ritual purposes. Perhaps they reflected status. The stone offers possibilities, not certainty. Another mystery lies beneath the hill itself. Only part of the necropolis has been fully explored. Modern neighborhoods surround much of the ancient site, and archaeologists believe additional tombs may still remain hidden beneath streets, gardens, and buildings waiting to be discovered. The mountain has not revealed everything. It still keeps secrets, as it always has. Walking across Tuvik's today is unlike visiting most archaeological sites. The Mediterranean glitters in the distance. Warm wind moves through wild grasses. The entrances to the tombs appear suddenly among the limestone cliffs. Dark openings, leading underground. Each doorway marks another forgotten family, another life, another story lost to time. Perhaps that is what makes Tuvik's so extraordinary. Not simply its size, but its relationship with the mountain itself. Rather than building monuments upon the landscape, its creators transformed the landscape into the monument. The cliff became architecture. The stone became memory. The hill became a silent city that has endured for more than 2,000 years. Empires came and went. The Phoenicians disappeared. Carthage fell. Rome arrived. Centuries passed. Yet the mountain remained. Its chambers still face the Mediterranean. Its quiet passages still descend into darkness. Waiting. Watching. Keeping the stories of thousands of forgotten lives hidden inside the living rock, and reminding us that some of history's greatest cities were never built beneath the sky. They were carved into the heart of a mountain itself. The ancient palace hidden beneath a modern village. In the rolling plains of southern Turkmenistan, a quiet village stands where people have lived for generations. Children play in dusty streets. Homes overlook the surrounding hills. Life moves at an unhurried pace. Nothing about the landscape suggests that beneath the ground lies the capital of one of Central Asia's greatest forgotten kingdoms. An immense royal palace, towering fortifications, treasure halls, ceremonial temples, wine cellars filled with enormous jars. For centuries, they remained hidden beneath layers of earth, waiting, silently, for archaeologists to uncover a kingdom that once challenged the greatest empires of the ancient world. This is Old Nisa, the first royal capital of the Parthian Empire, a city whose greatest secrets slept beneath an ordinary village. More than 2,000 years ago, the Parthians emerged from the vast steppes of Central Asia to build an empire stretching from the borders of India to the Euphrates River, becoming one of Rome's greatest rivals for nearly 5 centuries. Their armies were legendary, their horse archers feared, their kings immensely powerful. Yet surprisingly little of their earliest capital survived, or so historians believed. Old Nisa was founded during the 3rd century BC, likely under Arsaces or one of his immediate successors, serving as both a royal residence and an important ceremonial center during the rise of the Parthian dynasty. This was where a new empire began. Kings were celebrated, royal treasures collected, dynastic traditions established. The city became the symbolic heart of Parthian power. Unlike many ancient capitals built beside great rivers, Old Nisa occupied a naturally defensible position surrounded by massive mud brick walls strengthened with powerful towers that once dominated the surrounding plain. The fortifications were enormous, impressive, designed to inspire confidence and discourage invasion. Even today, their scale is remarkable. For centuries, the ruins slowly disappeared beneath drifting soil and the expanding settlement that developed nearby. The palace collapsed. Its walls crumbled. The earth gradually covered everything. Fields replaced courtyards. Homes stood above forgotten halls. The ancient city simply became part of the landscape, almost invisible. Systematic excavations during the 20th century transformed historians' understanding of the site. Beneath the surface, archaeologists uncovered vast ceremonial buildings, columned halls, storage complexes, temples, and remarkable administrative structures preserved beneath centuries of accumulated earth. Room after room emerged, wall after wall. The buried palace slowly returned to daylight. Among the most extraordinary discoveries were enormous storerooms containing giant ceramic jars once used to hold wine, oil, and valuable provisions reserved for the royal court. Some jars stood taller than a person. Others remained partially buried in the floor. Their sheer size reflected careful planning. The palace supported a kingdom, not merely a household. Another remarkable discovery came from the royal treasury. Archaeologists uncovered beautifully carved ivory rite-ons, elegant drinking vessels decorated with scenes inspired by both Greek and Persian artistic traditions. Each object displayed extraordinary craftsmanship. Two cultures met in one work of art, East and West, blended together. The Parthians created something uniquely their own. Researchers continue debating the exact purpose of several unusual buildings found inside the fortified complex. Some believe certain halls served royal ceremonies. Others suggest they functioned as dynastic shrines honoring deceased rulers. A few may have been used for storing sacred treasures. The architecture provides clues, never certainty. The palace keeps much of its story to itself. One mystery still fascinates archaeologists. Despite ruling one of antiquity's greatest empires, the Parthians left relatively few written records compared with Rome, Egypt, or Mesopotamia. Much of what we know comes from their enemies, or from the ruins themselves. The stones have become historians, patiently preserving what documents did not. Walking through Old Nisa today, the towering mud brick walls still rise above the surrounding plain. The foundations of royal halls stretch beneath the open sky. Wind moves across courtyards once reserved for kings. Beyond the ruins, modern life continues quietly. The village remains. The palace remains beneath it. Two worlds, separated by more than 2,000 years, sharing the same ground. Perhaps that is the greatest mystery of Old Nisa. Not how the Parthians built an empire. History remembers that. But how the birthplace of one of antiquity's greatest powers could disappear so completely beneath an ordinary village, leaving only fragments of its remarkable story waiting below the surface. The palace still watches. The walls still endure. The buried halls still guard their silence, patiently, as they have for more than 20 centuries, waiting for each new excavation to uncover another forgotten chapter of a kingdom that once stood between Rome and the East, shaping history from a city the world almost forgot. The lost kingdom hidden inside a deep forest. Deep within the forests of northern Cambodia, where towering trees hide the horizon and tangled vines swallow everything left untouched, an enormous stone pyramid rises above the jungle. Its steps climb sharply toward the sky. Broken temples surround its base. Ancient reservoirs disappear beneath the trees. The forest is alive with birdsong. Yet beneath the canopy lies the forgotten heart of a kingdom, a royal capital that ruled an empire, then vanished, not beneath the sea, not beneath desert sands, but beneath a living forest. This is Koh Ker, a city that briefly became the center of the Khmer Empire before history quietly turned away. Long before Angkor Wat became the symbol of Cambodia's ancient civilization, the Khmer Empire was already expanding across Southeast Asia, building roads, reservoirs, temples, and royal cities that transformed the landscape on an astonishing scale. Kings competed for power. Architects reshaped the earth. Stone became sacred. The empire continued to grow, always reaching farther. During the early 10th century, King Jayavarman IV made an extraordinary decision. Rather than ruling from Angkor, he established a completely new royal capital nearly 100 kilometers away in the forests of northern Cambodia. The move surprised historians. Why abandon an established capital? Why build another so far away? No written record gives a complete answer. The forest keeps its silence. In only a few decades, Koh Ker became one of the largest construction projects in Khmer history. Thousands of workers carved temples from sandstone. Engineers created enormous reservoirs. Roads connected distant monuments. Palaces filled the city. The jungle echoed with activity. What seems isolated today was once a thriving royal capital, alive with ceremony, trade, and ambition. At the center of the city stands Prasat Tam, a remarkable 7-tiered pyramid rising nearly 36 meters above the surrounding forest, making it one of the tallest temple structures ever built by the Khmer civilization. Its steep stairways dominate the landscape. Every level climbs higher, toward the sky. Unlike Angkor Wat, unlike almost any other Khmer monument, the pyramid feels strikingly different, almost mysterious. Archaeologists believe the summit once supported an enormous sacred shrine, possibly housing one of the empire's most important religious statues. Historical inscriptions describe a massive golden linga, a symbol associated with the Hindu god Shiva. The statue itself has disappeared. Without a trace, only the platform remains, waiting for answers. The surrounding city was equally impressive. Modern archaeological surveys using airborne laser scanning have revealed an extensive urban landscape hidden beneath the forest canopy, including canals, reservoirs, roads, neighborhoods, and dozens of temples stretching far beyond the visible ruins. The jungle concealed everything, patiently, for centuries. Only recently has technology begun revealing the city's true scale. One enduring mystery concerns Koh Ker's remarkably short life as a royal capital. Within little more than 2 decades, the Khmer court returned to Angkor, leaving this magnificent city behind. Why? Some researchers point to political change. Others suggest religious reasons. A few believe the region's water management presented long-term challenges. Perhaps several factors combined. History rarely offers simple endings. After the royal court departed, the forest slowly reclaimed the city. Roots split stone walls. Trees rose through temple courtyards. Leaves covered ancient roads. Generations passed without knowing what lay beneath the canopy. The kingdom disappeared, not completely, only from view. The jungle became its guardian. Walking through Koh Ker today feels unlike visiting any other Khmer site. The temples emerge suddenly between towering trees. Massive roots embrace ancient walls. Sunlight filters through dense branches onto weathered sandstone. The pyramid rises unexpectedly above the forest. Silent, powerful, almost untouched by time. The city still feels hidden, even when standing inside it. Perhaps that is the greatest mystery of Koh Ker, not how quickly it was built. The ruins demonstrate extraordinary skill, but why an imperial capital of such importance was abandoned almost as quickly as it rose, allowing the jungle to erase it from memory for nearly 1,000 years. The kings have vanished. The palaces have disappeared. The forest remains, watching, waiting, keeping the story of a lost kingdom beneath its endless green canopy, and reminding us that some of history's greatest capitals are not buried beneath the earth. They are hidden beneath the trees, waiting for the forest to let them be seen once again. The giant stone platform built before the Inca, high in the Peruvian Andes, where cold winds sweep across open grasslands and quiet lakes reflect the surrounding mountains. Enormous blocks of stone rest upon a lonely hillside. There are no crowds here, no famous temples, no towering citadel, only a vast stone platform, weathered, silent, built centuries before the Inca ever ruled these mountains. Who placed these massive stones here? Why was such an enormous monument built in such a remote landscape? Even today, archaeologists continue searching for the answers. This is Pumacocha, one of Peru's least known ancient ceremonial sites, and one of its most intriguing forgotten mysteries. Long before the Inca Empire united much of western South America, powerful cultures were already shaping the Andean highlands, building ceremonial centers, agricultural terraces, and sacred monuments that reflected centuries of engineering knowledge and religious tradition. Kingdoms rose, communities flourished, sacred landscapes emerged, The Andes became a living monument. Long before written history, near the shores of Lake Pumacocha, archaeologists discovered an extraordinary complex built from enormous, carefully shaped stone blocks arranged into broad terraces and massive platforms overlooking the surrounding valley. The setting feels intentional. The view stretches for kilometers. Mountains surround the site. Water lies below. Nature became part of the design, not merely the backdrop. Researchers believe much of the complex was constructed by the Wari civilization, which flourished between the 7th and 11th centuries AD, several hundred years before the rise of the Inca Empire. The Wari built roads, administrative centers, temples, and ceremonial complexes across much of the central Andes. Their influence reached astonishing distances. Yet today, they remain far less familiar than the civilization that followed them. The stone platform itself immediately captures attention. Huge blocks fit together with remarkable precision. Wide terraces extend across the hillside. Carefully planned stairways connect different levels. Nothing appears accidental. Every stone seems to belong exactly where it rests. The builders understood both engineering and landscape, perhaps equally well. One of the site's most remarkable features is an intricate network of stone-lined canals and water channels directing fresh mountain water through different parts of the ceremonial complex before returning it naturally to the surrounding landscape. Water flowed constantly, quietly, predictably, perhaps carrying symbolic meaning, perhaps serving practical needs. Most likely both. The Andes have always treated water as something sacred. Archaeologists continue debating the true purpose of the Great Platform. Some believe it served as an important religious sanctuary where ceremonies honored mountain spirits and life-giving water. Others suggest it functioned as an elite administrative center connected to the wider Wari state. A few researchers think it combined both roles, government and belief, power and ritual. Ancient societies rarely separated them completely. Another enduring mystery concerns the site's impressive masonry. Although not identical to later Inca stonework, the carefully fitted blocks reveal advanced construction techniques that influenced later Andean builders for centuries. Knowledge did not appear suddenly. It evolved, generation after generation, each civilization building upon what came before. The stones preserve that quiet conversation across time. Modern archaeological surveys continue uncovering additional walls, terraces, canals, and surrounding structures hidden beneath layers of vegetation and accumulated soil, suggesting that only part of the ancient complex has been fully explored. The platform is only the beginning. The mountain still hides more. Excavation after excavation reveals another piece, never the whole picture. Walking across Pumacocha today feels remarkably peaceful. The high-altitude air is crisp. The nearby lake reflects the changing clouds. Wild grasses move gently across the terraces. The stone platform overlooks the valley exactly as it has for centuries, watching, waiting. Its builders disappeared long ago. Their monument remained. Perhaps that is what makes Pumacocha so extraordinary. Not simply its enormous stones. The Andes are filled with remarkable masonry. But the fact that this forgotten ceremonial center reminds us that sophisticated civilizations flourished here long before the Inca transformed the mountains into an empire. The platform still rises above the lake. The canals still guide the water. The mountains still surround the valley, patiently, silently, keeping the memory of a civilization whose greatest achievements were almost overshadowed by the empire that came after it, and reminding us that history is often built in layers, with every great civilization standing upon the foundations of another that the world nearly forgot. Bronze Age city frozen beneath desert sand. Across the vast Karakum Desert of Turkmenistan, endless dunes stretch toward the horizon. The wind moves constantly. Sand shifts with every season. From a distance, the landscape appears empty, lifeless, untouched. But beneath the desert lies the remains of a forgotten city, a city with palaces, massive walls, temples, royal tombs, and streets abandoned nearly 4,000 years ago. Unlike many ancient capitals, it was never built over by later civilizations. The desert simply covered it, protecting an entire Bronze Age world beneath its sands. This is Gonur Depe, the greatest city of a civilization many people have never heard of. Nearly 4,000 years ago, this region looked nothing like the desert seen today. Rivers flowed across broad, fertile plains. Fields surrounded growing settlements. Trade caravans crossed Central Asia, carrying metals, precious stones, and rare goods between distant civilizations. Life flourished. The desert had not yet claimed the land. Water shaped everything. Archaeologists identify Gonur Depe as the largest known city of the Bactria-Margiana archaeological complex, often called the Oxus civilization, which flourished between roughly 2300 and 1700 BC across parts of present-day Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, and northern Iran. It was an advanced society, highly organized, remarkably skilled, yet almost completely forgotten. The city itself was astonishingly sophisticated. Massive defensive walls surrounded the central settlement. Fortified gates controlled entry. Large ceremonial buildings dominated the skyline. Residential neighborhoods spread outward in carefully planned sections. Nothing about the city appears accidental. Everything reflects careful organization. The builders thought on a grand scale. At the heart of Gonur Depe stood an enormous palace complex filled with courtyards, audience halls, workshops, storage rooms, and administrative buildings that once served the rulers of this remarkable desert kingdom. Officials gathered here. Ceremonies unfolded here. Decisions shaped an entire civilization. Today, only mud brick walls remain, but their scale still impresses. One of the site's greatest surprises came from its temples. Excavations revealed elaborate religious complexes containing fire altars, ceremonial spaces, and carefully designed water installations, leading some researchers to suggest that beliefs later associated with early Iranian religious traditions may have roots in places like Gonur Depe. The connection remains debated. The evidence is intriguing. The questions remain open. Royal cemeteries surrounding the city produced extraordinary discoveries. Gold ornaments, silver vessels, stone seals, decorated ceramics, bronze weapons, beautiful jewelry, even complete horse-drawn carts buried beside elite individuals. These were not ordinary graves. They belonged to people of immense importance. The city honored them in death, as it had in life. Another mystery continues to fascinate archaeologists. Several tombs contained carefully constructed underground chambers with evidence of ritual offerings placed long after the original burials. Food, ceremonial objects, sacred vessels. The living continued returning, generation after generation. The dead were never entirely gone. The city remembered them. Researchers also uncovered an extraordinary network of canals that once carried water across the settlement, supporting agriculture in what is now one of the driest landscapes in Central Asia. The achievement was remarkable. Without water, the city could never have existed. When the rivers gradually shifted away, everything changed. The desert slowly advanced. The civilization quietly disappeared. Perhaps that disappearance became Gonur Depe's greatest protection. Unlike famous cities repeatedly occupied through later centuries, Gonur Depe was largely abandoned and left undisturbed as drifting sand slowly covered its buildings. The palace collapsed. The streets vanished. The walls disappeared beneath the desert. Time stopped. The city slept, patiently, for thousands of years. Walking through Gonur Depe today feels like stepping into another world. Ancient mud brick walls emerge from the pale sand. Temple foundations stretch toward the horizon. The desert wind echoes through empty courtyards where rulers once walked. Nothing interrupts the silence. The city feels suspended in time, almost untouched since its final days. Perhaps that is what makes Gonur Depe so extraordinary. Not simply its age, or its size, but the fact that an entire Bronze Age civilization flourished here with remarkable engineering, religion, trade, and architecture before fading so completely that the desert erased almost every memory of its existence. The rivers changed course. The people disappeared. The sand became their guardian. Yet beneath the endless dunes, the city still waits, watching, silent, preserving the story of a forgotten kingdom that history almost lost forever. The giant stone tomb hidden inside a forest, deep in the quiet countryside of southeastern Ireland, where ancient oak trees cast long shadows across rolling fields, an enormous slab of granite rises above the forest floor. It looks almost impossible. One stone, balanced high above smaller pillars, too heavy, too massive, too perfectly placed. For thousands of years, it has stood against wind, rain, and changing seasons without falling. No one remembers the people who built it, yet their monument still watches the landscape, silent, unmoving, waiting. This is Brownshill Dolmen, home to the largest capstone ever placed upon a prehistoric tomb in Europe. Nearly 5,000 years ago, long before written history reached Ireland, farming communities began raising remarkable stone monuments across the island, creating tombs, ceremonial sites, and sacred landscapes that would outlast every village they ever built. Their houses disappeared, their fields changed, their names were forgotten. The stones remained, patiently preserving their memory. Brownshill Dolmen stands just outside the modern town of Carlo, where generations have admired its extraordinary size without ever fully understanding how prehistoric builders managed to place such an immense stone into its present position. The monument is breathtaking, simple, yet overwhelming. Its enormous capstone dominates everything around it. The capstone alone is estimated to weigh well over 100 metric tons, making it the heaviest surviving dolmen capstone known anywhere in Europe. It is almost unimaginable. One single block. Lifted. Positioned. Balanced. Using only prehistoric technology. The achievement still commands respect, even today. Archaeologists believe the monument was constructed during the Neolithic period, sometime around 3500 BC, serving as a communal tomb where generations of a local farming community were laid to rest over many centuries. It was never meant for one individual or one family. It belonged to an entire community, a place of remembrance, a place of ceremony, perhaps even pilgrimage. Originally, the Great Stone Chamber would likely have been covered by a large earthen mound, protecting the burial space hidden beneath while leaving only part of the monument visible above the surrounding landscape. Today, the mound has vanished. Only the skeleton remains, stone supporting stone. The monument now reveals what was once hidden. Excavations carried out around the dolmen uncovered fragments of human remains together with pottery and other burial objects, confirming that the structure served as a funerary monument rather than simply a ceremonial landmark. The dead rested here. Generation after generation, the chamber became sacred through memory, not through wealth. The greatest mystery, however, remains the capstone itself. How did Neolithic builders move a stone weighing more than 100 tons across uneven ground without wheels, cranes, or metal machinery? Some researchers believe timber rollers, earthen ramps, ropes, and hundreds of workers made the task possible. Others suggest the builders carefully exploited the natural slope of the landscape. Perhaps both methods were used together. No one knows for certain. The stone refuses to explain itself. Another unanswered question concerns why prehistoric communities devoted such extraordinary effort to monuments like Brownshill Dolmen. The labor required would have been immense. Months, perhaps years. Entire communities working together. The monument clearly meant something profound. Whether honoring ancestors, expressing spiritual beliefs, or strengthening community identity remains uncertain. The purpose survives only in silence. Standing beside Brownshill Dolmen today is a humbling experience. The capstone towers overhead. Its rough granite surface still bears the marks of countless winters. Birdsong echoes through the surrounding trees. The forest seems to protect the monument, as though it has become part of the landscape itself. The stone has not moved. Time has. Perhaps that is what makes Brownshill Dolmen so unforgettable. Not simply its astonishing weight, but the quiet determination of the people who built it. They left behind no written language, no kings, no grand cities. Only one enormous stone balanced above a chamber where their loved ones rested. 5,000 years later, the builders are gone. The forest has changed. The world has transformed beyond recognition. Yet the giant tomb still stands, watching, waiting, keeping its oldest secrets beneath a single stone that has refused to fall for nearly 50 centuries. A silent reminder that some of humanity's greatest achievements were built not for the living, but for the memory of those who came before. The forgotten harbor where Persian kings met the sea. Along the southern coast of Iran, where the Persian Gulf meets towering desert cliffs, the ruins of an ancient harbor overlook waters that once carried merchants to the farthest edges of the known world. Today, the shoreline is quiet. Fishing boats drift gently across the bay. Stone foundations lie scattered beneath the sun. It is difficult to imagine that this peaceful coast was once one of the richest ports on earth, a place where silk arrived from China, ivory came from Africa, spices crossed from India, and merchants speaking dozens of languages crowded the waterfront. For centuries, this harbor connected kingdoms separated by thousands of kilometers. Then it vanished, almost completely. This is Siraf, a forgotten port where Persia met the sea. More than 1,200 years ago, Siraf stood at the center of one of the greatest maritime trading networks of the medieval world, linking the Persian Gulf with India, East Africa, Southeast Asia, and the distant ports of China. Ships arrived almost daily, warehouses overflowed, markets filled with unfamiliar languages. Fortunes were made. The sea brought everything, and took everything away. Although the surrounding landscape appears harsh today, Siraf flourished because of its remarkable natural harbor, where steep mountains protected ships from strong winds while providing direct access to trade routes stretching across the Indian Ocean. The geography was perfect, the location unmatched. Nature created the harbor. People transformed it into a city. Archaeologists believe Siraf reached its greatest prosperity between the 8th and 10th centuries AD during the early Islamic period, when Persian merchants became some of the most accomplished sailors and traders anywhere in the world. Their ships crossed immense distances. Monsoon winds became highways. The ocean became a marketplace. Siraf stood at its heart. The city itself was unlike most ancient ports. Elegant stone houses climbed the surrounding hillsides. Grand merchant residences overlooked the harbor. Mosques, markets, warehouses, and workshops filled the waterfront below. Every available space was used. The city rose vertically, following the mountains, rather than the shoreline. Excavations have uncovered imported Chinese porcelain, Indian pottery, East African ivory, glass from Mesopotamia, and countless luxury goods, revealing just how connected Siraf was to civilizations thousands of kilometers away. The harbor welcomed the world, not through conquest, but through commerce. Every artifact tells the same story. People traveled farther than we often imagine. One remarkable discovery continues to fascinate archaeologists. Dozens of elaborate rock-cut tombs carved high into the limestone cliffs overlooking the harbor. Some are simple, others surprisingly spacious. Their exact purpose remains uncertain. Were they family tombs? Religious monuments? Prestigious burial places for wealthy merchants? No one knows for certain. The cliffs remain silent. Another mystery surrounds the extraordinary wealth once concentrated here. Historical accounts describe merchants whose fortunes rivaled those of kings, owning fleets that crossed the Indian Ocean and returned with priceless cargo from distant lands. The stories seem almost unbelievable, yet archaeology continues confirming just how prosperous Siraf truly became. The ruins match the legends, more often than expected. Then everything changed. In the late 10th century, a series of powerful earthquakes struck the region, severely damaging much of the city, while political and economic changes gradually shifted international trade toward other ports across the Persian Gulf. The harbor declined. The ships stopped coming. Markets emptied. The sea continued its rhythm. The city slowly faded. Centuries passed. Wind carried sand across abandoned streets. Stone buildings collapsed. The harbor that once welcomed the world became a quiet coastal settlement known only to local communities and occasional travelers. History moved elsewhere. Siraf simply waited, patiently, beside the water. Walking through Siraf today feels remarkably peaceful. The Persian Gulf still sparkles beneath the cliffs. Ancient foundations stretch toward the shoreline. The sea breeze carries the same salt air that filled the sails of merchants more than 1,000 years ago. The ships are gone. The warehouses have disappeared. But the harbor remains, still facing the open sea. Perhaps that is what makes Siraf so extraordinary, not simply its remarkable wealth, or the treasures that pass through its markets, but the reminder that some of history's greatest cities owed their power not to armies or emperors, but to the courage of sailors willing to cross unknown oceans. The merchants are gone. Their kingdoms have vanished. The trade routes have changed. Yet the forgotten harbor still watches the Persian Gulf, waiting. Quietly, as the tides continue to wash against the same shore where distant worlds once came together. The stone labyrinth hidden beneath an ordinary French village. Above the ground, it looks like any other quiet village in northern France. Stone houses, narrow streets, church bells echoing across the countryside, children walking to school. Nothing feels unusual. Nothing hints at what lies below. Yet beneath these ordinary streets stretches an underground world unlike almost anywhere else in Europe. Kilometers of tunnels, hidden chapels, deep wells, thousands of chambers carved into solid chalk. A city beneath a village, built in darkness, protected by silence, waiting beneath the feet of everyone above. This is Naours' underground city, one of France's greatest hidden archaeological landscapes. The village of Naours lies in the Picardy region, where soft chalk beneath the rolling countryside allowed generations of people to carve vast underground passages that remained invisible from the surface for centuries. The ground concealed everything. The fields revealed nothing. History simply disappeared below. Although parts of the underground network may have originated during the Middle Ages, archaeologists believe the complex expanded gradually over many centuries as local communities transformed natural chalk deposits into an extraordinary refuge beneath the village. Every generation added something. Another tunnel, another chamber, another passage disappearing into darkness. The underground city slowly grew. Today, more than 300 interconnected chambers have been identified beneath Naours, linked by narrow corridors stretching for nearly 3 kilometers through the chalk bedrock. The scale is astonishing. Room after room, tunnel after tunnel, a hidden labyrinth beneath peaceful farmland. The underground settlement was far more than a collection of caves. Families created kitchens, storage rooms, bread ovens, animal shelters, small chapels, even ventilation shafts reaching the surface. Everything needed for survival existed below ground. The city became a second home, hidden from the world. Historians believe villagers repeatedly sought shelter here during periods of invasion and warfare, especially throughout the conflicts that swept northern France during the Middle Ages and the early modern period. Danger arrived above. Life continued below. The tunnels offered safety. The darkness offered protection. The stone became a guardian. One of the site's most remarkable discoveries came unexpectedly. During modern exploration, researchers found thousands of names, dates, and military inscriptions carved into the chalk walls by soldiers who visited the underground city during the First World War. British names, Australian names, Canadian names, American names. Many had simply wandered through the tunnels while stationed nearby. They left their signatures, without realizing they were adding another chapter to a place already centuries old. Another mystery surrounds the true extent of the underground network. Only the known passages have been mapped in detail, but researchers believe additional chambers may still remain sealed behind collapsed walls or undiscovered beneath the surrounding countryside. The chalk keeps its secrets, patiently, as it always has. Archaeologists also continue debating exactly how many people could have taken refuge inside Naours during times of danger. Some estimates suggest several thousand. Others believe the number was considerably smaller. The surviving chambers provide clues, not certainty. The underground city refuses to reveal every answer. Walking through Naours today is an unforgettable experience. Cool air replaces the warmth of the surface. Footsteps echo softly through narrow corridors. Low ceilings force visitors to move carefully. Every turn reveals another chamber, another passage, another doorway disappearing into shadow. The silence feels ancient, almost protective. Perhaps that is what makes Naours so extraordinary. Not simply its remarkable size, or its ingenious design, but the fact that generations of ordinary people created an invisible city where entire communities could survive without ever being seen from above. No grand palace, no towering monument, only quiet determination carved into stone. The village above continued to change. Wars came and went, kings ruled, empires disappeared. The houses were rebuilt. The streets evolved. Yet beneath them, the underground city remained almost exactly as it had been for centuries. Waiting. Watching. Hidden beneath everyday life. A reminder that some of history's greatest monuments were never meant to be admired. They were meant to remain unseen. Until the day the darkness finally gave them back to the light. The Sumerian megacity still hiding beneath ancient spoil heaps. In southern Iraq, far from the crowds that gather around Egypt's pyramids or Rome's ancient streets, a series of low earthen mounds stretches across the desert. At first glance, they seem ordinary. Wine-shaped hills, piles of broken earth, nothing more. But those mounds are not natural. They are the remains of one of humanity's earliest great cities, a place where kings ruled. Temples towered above the plain. Priests recorded history on clay tablets. And some of the world's first written laws began to take shape. For more than a century, archaeologists have worked here, yet much of the city still lies buried, hidden beneath the spoil heaps left behind by the earliest excavations themselves. This is Gursue, one of ancient Sumer's greatest cities, and one of archaeology's unfinished stories. More than 5,000 years ago, the fertile plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers gave birth to one of the world's first urban civilizations. Cities rose from the marshes. Canals carried water across the fields. Farmers harvested grain. Merchants crossed the rivers. Writing itself was beginning. History was finding its voice. Known today as Tello, Gursu flourished during the 3rd millennium BC as one of the most important religious and administrative centers of the Sumerian world, long before Babylon became the dominant power in Mesopotamia. Its rulers governed vast territories. Its temples attracted pilgrims. Its scribes filled thousands of clay tablets with records that survive to this day. The city became a heart of early civilization. At its height, Gursu covered an enormous area filled with monumental temples, royal buildings, workshops, canals, and residential districts carefully connected across the floodplain. This was not a small settlement. It was a megacity, built from mud brick, organized with astonishing precision, growing century after century. The city's greatest monument was the Temple of Ningirsu, dedicated to the powerful Sumerian warrior god who served as the divine protector of Gursu and its people. Religious ceremonies filled its courtyards. Offerings arrived daily. Priests maintained sacred rituals. The temple stood at the center of city life, watching over everything around it. Gursu first attracted international attention during the late 19th century when French archaeologists uncovered thousands of remarkable artifacts, including statues, inscriptions, and countless cuneiform tablets that transformed the world's understanding of ancient Sumer. Every excavation revealed something extraordinary. Stone sculptures, foundation tablets, royal inscriptions. The city seemed endless, yet so did the work. There was one problem. Early archaeology was very different from modern archaeology. Excavators often removed enormous amounts of earth using techniques that would no longer be acceptable today. The discarded soil formed vast spoil heaps across the site, mountains of excavated earth, covering areas that had never been properly studied. Ironically, archaeology buried archaeology. That unexpected legacy has become one of Gursu's greatest mysteries. Modern researchers now believe important buildings, streets, and artifacts may still remain hidden beneath those old excavation mounds, untouched for more than 100 years. The city is hiding beneath itself, a rare archaeological puzzle, created not by ancient builders, but by early archaeologists. Recent excavations have already begun proving that belief. Using modern surveying techniques, archaeologists have uncovered previously unknown temples, neighborhoods, canals, and administrative buildings overlooked during earlier investigations. The discoveries continue, year after year. Each trench reveals another forgotten corner of the city. The story is still being written. Researchers are also fascinated by how remarkably organized Gursu appears to have been. Its canals regulated water. Its temples managed agriculture. Its scribes recorded taxes, trade, and religious ceremonies with astonishing detail on thousands of clay tablets. Order shaped daily life. Administration supported civilization. The written word became power. Walking across Gursu today feels unlike visiting almost any other ancient city. The landscape appears quiet, almost empty. Spoil heaps rise gently above the plain. Scattered mud brick walls emerge from the earth. Every mound suggests another buried building. Every excavation trench opens another window into humanity's earliest cities. The silence feels temporary, as though the ground is waiting to speak again. Perhaps that is what makes Gursu so extraordinary. Not simply its remarkable age, or the fact that it helped shape one of the world's first civilizations, but that after more than a century of excavation, one of history's greatest cities still refuses to reveal all of its secrets. The temples remain beneath the soil. The spoil heaps still guard forgotten streets. The clay tablets continue telling their stories, one discovery at a time, waiting, patiently, for the next generation of archaeologists to uncover another chapter of a city where civilization itself first learned how to remember. The lost kingdom buried beneath the fields of Bulgaria. Across the quiet countryside of northeastern Bulgaria, golden wheat fields ripple gently beneath the wind. Small villages dot the horizon. Farmers work the same fertile land their ancestors have cultivated for generations. At first glance, nothing appears unusual. Just open countryside, rolling hills, a peaceful landscape. But beneath these fields rests the forgotten heart of an ancient kingdom. Hidden tombs, sacred temples, royal treasures. and the remains of a civilization that once challenged the greatest powers of the ancient world. For centuries, it remained almost completely unknown, until archaeology began uncovering what the earth had quietly protected. This is the Asporianovo Archaeological Reserve, a place where the lost kingdom of the Thracians still sleeps beneath the soil. More than 23 centuries ago, this region formed the center of the powerful Getae, one of the Thracian peoples whose kingdom stretched across much of southeastern Europe before the rise of the Roman Empire. Greek historians wrote about them. Persian armies encountered them. Later, Roman writers admired their fierce independence. Yet much of their history disappeared with time. Only the landscape remembered. Archaeologists believe the ancient city of Helios, the royal capital of the Getae, once stood within what is now the Asporianovo Archaeological Reserve, surrounded by defensive walls, sacred sanctuaries, royal residences, and hundreds of ceremonial burial mounds. It was more than a city. It was the center of a kingdom, a place of kings, priests, warriors, and ancient traditions. The reserve covers an enormous area scattered with more than 100 prehistoric and Thracian burial mounds, many of which still rise gently above the surrounding farmland like natural hills. Most travelers drive past them, without realizing they are looking at royal tombs, hidden in plain sight, for over 2,000 years. One of the site's greatest discoveries came in 1982, when archaeologists uncovered the magnificent Thracian royal tomb beneath one of the largest burial mounds. Inside lay an astonishing underground chamber, beautifully preserved, its walls decorated with elegant stone columns, painted details, and remarkable architectural precision. The tomb felt less like a grave, more like a palace beneath the earth. The chamber continues to puzzle researchers. 10 graceful female figures carved into the walls appear to support the ceiling above them. Some believe they represent priestesses. Others think they symbolize protective goddesses welcoming the dead into the next world. A few suggest they portray members of the royal household. No inscription explains their identity. The stone keeps their names and their silence. Excavations throughout Sporianovo have also uncovered temples, ritual pits, defensive earthworks, ceramics, weapons, jewelry, horse equipment, and countless objects reflecting a sophisticated society deeply connected to both warfare and religious ceremony. Life and belief existed side by side. Kings ruled. Priests performed sacred rituals. The kingdom flourished, long before Rome reached these lands. Another enduring mystery surrounds the true extent of the ancient capital. Modern surveys continue identifying buried streets, buildings, and fortifications beneath the surrounding fields, suggesting that much of Helios remains untouched beneath layers of soil accumulated over centuries. The visible ruins tell only part of the story. The rest remains hidden, patiently, waiting beneath the harvest. Researchers are also fascinated by the Thracians' spiritual beliefs. Ancient Greek writers described them as people who viewed death differently from many neighboring cultures, believing the soul continued its journey beyond earthly life. Whether those accounts are completely accurate remains uncertain, but the elaborate royal tombs certainly suggest that death held profound meaning. The journey continued. The monuments reflected that belief. Walking across Sporianovo today feels remarkably peaceful. Wildflowers bloom between the burial mounds. Birdsong carries across the open fields. Nothing interrupts the quiet landscape. Yet beneath every gentle rise may rest another undiscovered chamber, another forgotten ruler, another chapter of a civilization still emerging from the earth. The kingdom remains below, watching, waiting. Perhaps that is what makes Sporianovo so extraordinary. Not simply the beauty of its royal tombs, or the treasures hidden beneath its hills, but the realization that one of Europe's greatest ancient kingdoms has spent more than 2,000 years resting beneath ordinary farmland, almost invisible to the world above. The fields continue to grow. The seasons continue to change. The Thracian kingdom remains silent, patient, keeping its oldest secrets beneath the soil until history is ready to uncover them once again. The fortress where an entire massacre was frozen in time. On a small island off the southeastern coast of Sweden, a circular stone fortress stands alone against the wind. Its walls still surround the hill. Its gates still face the sea. Grass now covers the streets. Birds nest among the ancient stones. Everything feels peaceful, almost untouched. But beneath the soil of this quiet fortress, archaeologists uncovered one of the darkest moments ever preserved from the ancient world. Not a battlefield, not a cemetery, an entire community, caught in a single moment of unimaginable violence. Their final hours remained exactly where they fell, for more than 15 centuries. This is Sandby Borg, a place where time never moved forward. During the 5th century AD, the Baltic island of Åland was home to a series of fortified ring forts built from limestone, serving as protected settlements where families lived behind thick defensive walls during an uncertain and often dangerous age. The Roman Empire was collapsing. Power was shifting across Europe. Communities relied upon their own defenses. Safety came from stone. Sandby Borg was one of these remarkable ring forts, a perfectly circular settlement enclosed by massive walls, with narrow streets and dozens of stone houses carefully arranged inside the protective enclosure. Children once played here. Families shared meals. Craftsmen worked beside their homes. Life followed ordinary rhythms, until one terrible day. When archaeologists began excavating the site, they expected to find the familiar remains of an ancient settlement. Instead, they found people, still lying where they had died, inside houses, across narrow pathways, near doorways. Some collapsed face down. Others remained where they appeared to have made their final attempt to escape. The scene was haunting, almost untouched. One elderly man was discovered lying beside his fireplace. Another individual was found in the middle of a street. A body rested near the entrance of a house, as though trying to flee the attackers before collapsing only steps from safety. There were no formal burials, no signs that survivors had returned, only silence and the dead. Radiocarbon dating and archaeological evidence suggest the massacre occurred sometime during the late 5th century AD, when unknown attackers entered the fortress and killed many of its inhabitants in what appears to have been a sudden and carefully executed assault. The attack was swift, relentless, final. The fortress never truly recovered. What happened afterward may be even more extraordinary. The victims were never buried. Their belongings remained inside the houses. Jewelry stayed where it had fallen. Tools remained untouched. Even valuable objects were left behind. Looting was surprisingly limited. The settlement was simply abandoned, as though everyone who might have returned never did. Among the discoveries were beautifully crafted brooches, glass beads, silver ornaments, imported Roman objects, and everyday household possessions, offering a rare glimpse into daily life during one of Europe's least understood historical periods. Meals were interrupted. Work was unfinished. Doors remained open. Life stopped instantly. The ground remembered everything. Why the massacre happened remains one of archaeology's greatest unanswered questions. Some researchers believe rival elites attacked the settlement during a struggle for power. Others suggest political revenge, a raid connected to wider unrest following the collapse of Roman influence across northern Europe. No written record survives. No witness told the story. The fortress keeps that secret. Even more puzzling is what followed. Nearby communities almost certainly knew what had happened, yet no one appears to have reclaimed the settlement or buried its dead. Some archaeologists believe fear kept people away. Others think the site became taboo, a place no one wished to enter again. The walls continued standing. The silence grew deeper. Walking through Sandby Borg today feels strangely different from visiting most archaeological sites. The circular walls still define the settlement. Stone house foundations fill the grassy interior. The Baltic Sea glitters beyond the fortress. Nothing feels threatening, yet every pathway carries the memory of that single terrible day. The people never left. History simply covered them. Perhaps that is what makes Sandby Borg so unforgettable. Not because it tells the story of war. History has many battlefields. But because it preserves an ordinary community at the exact moment everything changed. A village interrupted. A meal unfinished. A doorway never crossed. The fortress still watches the Baltic Sea. Its walls still guard the silence. And beneath the grass, the final moments of an entire community remain frozen in time, waiting, patiently, as they have for more than 1,500 years. The ancient city where archaeologists found a complete Roman bakery. Just outside modern Rome, an ancient city still echoes with the sounds of everyday life. Stone streets stretch into the distance. Apartment buildings stand several stories high. Temples overlook busy squares. Fountains once flowed beside crowded markets. This was not a city of emperors. It was a city of ordinary people. Merchants, sailors, bakers, families. And hidden among its remarkably preserved streets, archaeologists uncovered something astonishing: an entire Roman bakery, almost complete. Its ovens, its mills, its workrooms, even the spaces where bread was prepared nearly 2,000 years ago. It offers one of the clearest windows into everyday life anywhere in the ancient world. This is Ostia Antica, the bustling port that fed Imperial Rome. More than 2,000 years ago, Ostia stood at the mouth of the Tiber River, serving as Rome's principal harbor and one of the busiest commercial cities in the Mediterranean. Grain ships arrived daily. Wine flowed through its warehouses. Olive oil filled enormous storage jars. Goods from every corner of the empire passed through its docks. The city never truly slept. Everything moved. Everything traded. As Rome's population grew into the hundreds of thousands, feeding the capital became one of the empire's greatest logistical challenges, and Ostia became the vital gateway through which enormous quantities of grain entered Italy before being distributed across the city. Every loaf mattered. Every shipment counted. Without the harbor, Rome struggled. Without bread, the empire faced unrest. The bakery became essential. Among Ostia's best-preserved buildings is the Bakery of Silvanus, a remarkably intact commercial bakery where archaeologists uncovered nearly every stage of ancient bread production preserved within a single complex. The ovens remain. The grinding rooms survive. The courtyards still connect each workspace. The building almost feels ready to reopen. Massive volcanic stone millstones still stand where workers once ground grain into flour. Each mill was turned by donkeys or mules walking in slow circles for hours each day. The animals did not leave. The stone remembers them. The grooves remain worn by centuries of work, quiet evidence of ordinary labor. Nearby, enormous brick ovens dominate the bakery. Their thick walls trapped heat with remarkable efficiency, allowing bakers to produce large quantities of bread every day for the surrounding neighborhoods and perhaps even for distribution throughout the city. The fires burned before sunrise. Dough became bread. The smell filled the streets. Morning began here. Archaeologists also discovered spacious preparation rooms where flour, water, and other ingredients were mixed before baking, revealing how carefully organized Roman commercial food production had already become nearly 2 millennia ago. Nothing appears random. Each room served a purpose: grinding, mixing, baking, storage. The bakery functioned like a carefully designed machine. One of the most fascinating discoveries is how closely the bakery was connected to nearby apartment buildings, shops, and busy streets, reminding researchers that bread production happened at the very center of daily urban life rather than on the city's outskirts. People walked past constantly. Customers arrived every day. The bakery belonged to the neighborhood, not just the marketplace. Researchers continue studying exactly how much bread facilities like this could produce. Some believe the largest bakeries supplied entire districts of Ostia. Others suggest they may even have contributed to Rome's enormous grain distribution system across the Tiber River. The evidence continues to grow. The ovens remain silent. Their full story is still unfolding. Unlike many ancient ruins shaped by centuries of rebuilding, Ostia escaped much of the continuous occupation that transformed Rome itself. As trade gradually shifted to new harbors, large sections of the city were abandoned. Buildings collapsed slowly. The earth protected them. Street by street, workshop by workshop, the bakery simply waited. Walking through Ostia Antica today feels remarkably familiar. Stone sidewalks still line the streets. Doorways open into ancient shops. The bakery's ovens stand exactly where Roman bakers built them centuries ago. It is easy to imagine flour drifting through the air, workers lifting fresh loaves, neighbors gathering outside before sunrise. The city still feels alive, only quieter. Perhaps that is what makes Ostia Antica so extraordinary. Not simply its remarkable preservation, but the reminder that history is not built only by emperors, generals, or great monuments. It is built by ordinary people beginning work before dawn, by bakers tending warm ovens, by families buying fresh bread on familiar streets. The harbor has grown silent. The ships no longer arrive. Yet the bakery still stands, waiting, patiently, keeping the simple story of everyday Roman life alive beneath the Italian sun, where the smell of fresh bread seems almost close enough to imagine once again. The hidden fortress built above the Danube, high above the broad waters of the Danube River, where one of Europe's greatest waterways cuts through the rolling plains of Romania, the ruins of an ancient fortress still watch the horizon. Its stone walls have survived empires. Its towers have witnessed countless armies. The river below never stops moving. Neither did history. Yet the fortress remained, century after century, guarding a frontier that shaped the fate of an empire. Today, only silence fills its streets. But beneath broken walls and fallen towers, archaeologists continue uncovering the story of a place where soldiers, merchants, and travelers once met at the very edge of the Roman world. This is Capidava, a forgotten stronghold built above one of history's greatest rivers. Nearly 19 centuries ago, the Danube formed the northern frontier of the Roman Empire, separating imperial provinces from the vast territories beyond where powerful tribes, merchants, and migrating peoples shaped a very different world. The river became a border, a highway, a lifeline. Everything depended upon it. Rome understood that well. Around the beginning of the 2nd century AD, during the reign of Emperor Trajan, Roman engineers established Capidava on a rocky bluff overlooking a narrow section of the Danube, where the commanding view allowed soldiers to watch both the river and the surrounding countryside. The location was chosen carefully. Nothing escaped its gaze. Ships passed below. Roads crossed nearby. The fortress controlled both. Massive limestone walls enclosed the settlement, strengthened by defensive towers placed at regular intervals around the perimeter. Strong gates protected the entrances. Barracks housed soldiers. Storehouses preserved supplies. Everything reflected careful military planning. The fortress was built to endure, and endure it did. Yet Capidava was never only a military outpost. Beyond its defensive walls grew a thriving civilian settlement where merchants, craftsmen, families, and traders built homes beside workshops and markets serving both the Roman garrison and travelers moving along the Danube frontier. Life unfolded daily. Children played in narrow streets. Blacksmiths shaped iron. Boats arrived from distant towns. The frontier became a community, not merely a battlefield. Archaeological excavations have uncovered remarkably preserved streets, houses, defensive walls, pottery, coins, tools, glassware, and inscriptions that reveal centuries of continuous occupation despite repeated invasions and political upheaval. The city adapted, again and again. Every generation rebuilt. The stones remembered. One of the site's most fascinating discoveries is a large Roman bath complex, reminding archaeologists that even on the empire's distant frontier, Roman daily life remained surprisingly familiar. Warm baths, running water, social gatherings, conversations after long days. The comforts of Rome reached even its most remote borders. Civilization traveled with the army. Capidava also preserves evidence of remarkable resilience. The fortress was damaged repeatedly during Gothic invasions, later rebuilt under Byzantine rule, and continued serving as an important defensive position for centuries after the Western Roman Empire itself had disappeared. Empires changed. The fortress adapted. Kings came and went. The walls remained, watching the river. Researchers continue debating why Capidava was finally abandoned. Some believe repeated invasions gradually weakened the settlement beyond recovery. Others point to changing trade routes along the Danube, political instability, economic decline. Perhaps each played a role. History rarely ends with a single event. The fortress offers clues, never certainty. Another mystery still lies beneath the earth. Only part of the ancient settlement has been fully excavated. Large sections remain buried beneath centuries of accumulated soil, where archaeologists believe additional homes, workshops, and public buildings are still waiting to emerge into the light. The ground keeps its secrets, patiently, as it always has. Walking through Capidava today is a peaceful experience. The Danube still flows beneath the cliffs. Wildflowers grow between ancient stones. The wind moves softly across the old walls. The towers no longer hold sentries. No warning horns echo across the valley. Only the river continues its endless journey toward the Black Sea. The fortress simply watches, as it has for nearly 2,000 years. Perhaps that is what makes Capidava so remarkable. Not simply its powerful walls, or its commanding view above the Danube, but the quiet reminder that the greatest frontiers in history were never defined only by conflict. They were places where cultures met, where merchants traded, where families built ordinary lives beneath extraordinary circumstances. The empire disappeared. The soldiers marched away. The frontier faded. Yet the hidden fortress still stands above the river, waiting, silent, keeping watch over the Danube, just as it did when Rome believed its borders could last forever. The desert city that supplied Rome with purple dye. On a quiet island off the southern coast of Tunisia, where white beaches meet the clear waters of the Mediterranean, the ruins of an ancient city lie scattered beneath drifting sand. Broken columns rise from the earth. Stone streets disappear beneath dunes. Fragments of walls stretch toward the sea. It feels peaceful, almost forgotten. Yet nearly 2,000 years ago, this shoreline was one of the busiest industrial centers in the Roman Empire. Not because of gold, not because of silver, but because of a single color, a deep royal purple, so rare, so valuable, that emperors reserved it for themselves. This is Meninx, a forgotten city whose greatest treasure was hidden inside tiny sea snails. More than 2,000 years ago, the island of Jerba stood at the crossroads of Mediterranean trade, welcoming merchants from North Africa, Italy, Greece, Egypt, and the Near East as ships crossed its sheltered waters throughout the year. The harbor was always busy. Warehouses filled quickly. Markets echoed with unfamiliar languages. The sea connected every shore. Meninx flourished because of it. Founded centuries before Roman rule, Meninx reached its greatest prosperity after becoming part of the Roman Empire, growing into one of North Africa's most important commercial ports and one of the Mediterranean's leading centers for producing Tyrian purple dye. Its reputation spread widely. Its products traveled farther still. Even Rome depended upon its craftsmen. The city quietly colored an empire. The famous purple dye came from marine snails belonging to the Murex family, collected along the rocky coastline surrounding the island before being processed through an extraordinarily complex and labor-intensive method. Every shell mattered. Thousands were needed. One garment required an astonishing effort. The finished color became priceless. The process remained carefully guarded. Archaeologists have uncovered enormous piles of crushed snail shells surrounding the ancient workshops, revealing just how vast the city's dye industry truly became during the height of Roman power. The heaps are extraordinary, layer upon layer, generation after generation, a mountain built from shells, each one part of a royal color. Excavations have also revealed spacious workshops, storage buildings, merchant houses, baths, temples, marketplaces, and elegant villas decorated with beautiful mosaics overlooking the Mediterranean. This was not simply a factory. It was a thriving city, prosperous, confident, connected to the wider Roman world. The sea brought both wealth and opportunity. One remarkable discovery continues to fascinate archaeologists. Chemical traces preserved inside ancient pottery vessels have confirmed that large quantities of purple dye were processed here, providing direct evidence for an industry once known mainly through historical texts. The pottery remembered. Even after the color disappeared, science revealed what history had only described. Researchers believe Meninx supplied luxury textiles to wealthy customers across the Roman Empire, where purple garments became powerful symbols of authority, prestige, and imperial privilege. The richer the color, the greater the status. Few could afford it. Even fewer were permitted to wear it. Purple became the language of power. Another mystery still surrounds the city's eventual decline. Some archaeologists point to changing trade networks after the fall of Roman authority in North Africa. Others believe shifting coastlines gradually reduced the harbor's importance. Perhaps economic changes slowly ended the dye industry itself. The evidence remains incomplete. The sea offers no explanation, only waves. For centuries, drifting sand covered much of the ancient city. Buildings collapsed quietly. Streets disappeared. The Mediterranean continued washing against the same shoreline where Roman merchants once loaded ships with some of the empire's most valuable exports. The city simply waited, patiently, hidden beneath the dunes. Walking through Meninx today feels remarkably serene. The sea sparkles beside ancient foundations. Fragments of marble lie scattered across the sand. Columns still rise toward the sky. The workshops are silent. No craftsmen stir the dye. No merchants bargain in the streets. Only the Mediterranean remains unchanged, watching the shoreline, as it always has. Perhaps that is what makes Meninx so extraordinary. Not simply the remarkable color it produced, or the wealth it brought to the Roman world, but the quiet reminder that one of history's greatest industries depended upon something as small and ordinary as a sea snail gathered from the rocks beside the shore. The emperors have vanished. The purple robes have faded. The harbor has grown quiet. Yet beneath the sands of Tunisia, the forgotten city still waits, watching, silent, keeping the story of the color that once dressed an empire hidden beside the endless blue waters of the Mediterranean. The ancient city that preserved an entire Roman water system. High in the mountains of northern Algeria, where forests give way to steep valleys and rolling hills, the ruins of an ancient Roman city emerge from the landscape with astonishing clarity. Stone streets still cross the hillsides. Temples overlook public squares. Triumphal arches rise against the sky. Everything appears remarkably complete. But one of the city's greatest achievements is almost invisible, hidden beneath its streets, flowing through its fountains, running beneath its bathhouses, an entire Roman water system, preserved with extraordinary precision after nearly 2,000 years. It reveals how one distant city mastered one of the greatest engineering challenges of the ancient world. This is Cuicul, known today as Jimala, a city where water made civilization possible. Founded around the end of the 1st century AD during the reign of Emperor Nerva, Cuicul was established as a Roman colony for retired soldiers, carefully planned on a rugged mountain plateau far from the Mediterranean coast. The location was beautiful, but difficult. The land was uneven. Water was never guaranteed. Engineering would decide the city's future. Unlike many Roman settlements built across flat plains, Cuicul occupied a steep landscape surrounded by hills and valleys, forcing Roman engineers to adapt their designs to terrain that seemed almost impossible for an urban center. Every street climbed. Every building required careful planning. Nothing could be built by accident. The city became an engineering masterpiece. To sustain thousands of inhabitants, Roman builders created an extensive hydraulic network that collected fresh water from nearby springs before distributing it throughout the city using carefully graded stone channels, underground conduits, reservoirs, fountains, and public baths. Gravity did the work. Every slope mattered. Every channel was measured. The water never stopped moving. Archaeologists have uncovered remarkably preserved sections of this water system, including underground pipelines, stone drainage channels, cisterns, fountains, and the sophisticated infrastructure that carried clean water across the city while removing wastewater with equal efficiency. It was not only about bringing water in, it was also about taking it away. Cleanliness required planning. Rome understood that well. One of Cuicul's greatest public buildings was its magnificent bath complex, where heated rooms, cold pools, changing areas, and exercise spaces depended entirely upon a reliable and continuous supply of flowing water. The baths were more than places to wash. They were meeting places, business centers, social spaces. The water connected every part of daily life. Excavations have also revealed beautifully preserved fountains positioned throughout the city, ensuring that fresh water remained available to ordinary citizens without requiring every household to maintain its own well. The fountains served everyone: travelers, merchants, children, families. The sound of flowing water once echoed through the streets from morning until night. Researchers continue studying how Roman engineers adapted their hydraulic system to Cuicul's mountainous environment, using carefully calculated gradients that allowed water to travel naturally without mechanical pumps. The design appears simple, but it required extraordinary precision. A mistake of only a few centimeters could stop the entire system. Yet it worked, for centuries. Another remarkable feature is how closely the city's water network was integrated with its streets, marketplaces, temples, and homes, demonstrating that Roman urban planning treated water as the foundation upon which every other part of the city depended. Without water, there could be no baths, no fountains, no workshops, no thriving community. The city flowed because the water did. As Roman authority gradually declined across North Africa, Cuicul slowly lost its political importance. Trade shifted. Populations changed. Buildings fell into ruin. Yet the mountain landscape protected much of the city beneath layers of soil, preserving not only its monuments but also the remarkable engineering hidden beneath its streets. Time buried the city. The earth preserved its secrets. Walking through Jimala today feels almost like stepping into a perfectly planned Roman town. Columns still frame the public squares. Ancient roads remain clearly visible. The fountains are silent now. The baths no longer fill with warm water. But beneath the stone pavement, the channels that once carried life through the city still survive, waiting quietly beneath the ruins. Perhaps that is what makes Cuicul so extraordinary. Not simply its temples or triumphal arches, but the invisible network that allowed an entire city to flourish in the mountains nearly 2,000 years ago. Most visitors admire the buildings. Roman engineers would have admired the water, because they understood a simple truth. Great cities are not built only above the ground. They are sustained by what flows beneath it. And in the quiet ruins of Gemala, that hidden achievement still endures. Silent, patient, flowing through history long after the last drop of Roman water disappeared. Forgotten royal capital hidden in the Caucasus. Between the snow-covered peaks of the Caucasus Mountains and the winding waters of the Mtakefari River, the ruins of a forgotten city rest beneath quiet fields. Wild grass covers broken walls. Stone foundations disappear beneath the earth. Birds circle above the ancient hill. At first glance, it seems unremarkable. Just another abandoned settlement. But more than 2,000 years ago, this was the royal heart of a powerful kingdom, a place where kings ruled. Foreign ambassadors arrived, armies gathered, and empires competed for influence. Then the capital faded from history, leaving only fragments behind, waiting beneath the soil. This is Armazi, better known as Armazi, the forgotten royal capital of ancient Iberia. Long before the medieval kingdom of Georgia emerged, the fertile valleys of the southern Caucasus were home to the Kingdom of Iberia, a powerful state that occupied a strategic crossroads between Rome, Persia, and the civilizations of the Near East. Every empire knew this land. Trade routes crossed its valleys. Armies marched through its passes. The kingdom stood between worlds. Perched on a commanding hill overlooking the Mtakefari River near modern Mtskheta, Armazi became the political and ceremonial center of the Iberian kings, its position allowing rulers to control both the surrounding countryside and one of the region's most important river crossings. The location offered everything: natural defenses, fresh water, wide views, control of the valley below. Few capitals were better placed. Archaeologists believe the city flourished from at least the 3rd century BC, growing into a fortified royal residence surrounded by massive defensive walls, palaces, temples, workshops, and carefully planned streets. Kings governed from here. Officials managed the kingdom. Priests conducted sacred ceremonies. The city became the beating heart of ancient Iberia. Excavations have uncovered the remains of impressive stone fortifications, elegant palace buildings, wine storage facilities, baths, and sophisticated drainage systems, revealing a city whose architecture blended local traditions with influences from both Rome and Persia. Cultures met here. Ideas blended. The city reflected both East and West, without fully belonging to either. One of the site's most remarkable discoveries is the famous bilingual Armazi inscription, written in both Greek and Aramaic, offering rare evidence of the diverse cultures, languages, and diplomatic connections that shaped this royal capital. The stone speaks, in 2 languages, to 2 worlds. Few discoveries reveal so much with so few words. Researchers have also uncovered richly furnished tombs belonging to members of the royal elite, containing gold jewelry, silver vessels, finely crafted glass, imported luxury goods, and beautifully worked weapons. These were not ordinary burials. They reflected wealth, power, international connections. The kingdom reached far beyond its borders. Yet much about Armazi remains uncertain. Very little survives above ground. The great palaces have disappeared. The temples are reduced to foundations. Many royal buildings remain buried beneath layers of earth accumulated over nearly 2 millennia. The capital still keeps much of its story hidden. Patiently, silently. Another enduring mystery surrounds the city's sudden decline. Historical records suggest that during the 4th century AD, invading armies devastated Armazi, ending its role as the kingdom's political center. Some researchers point to Persian invasions. Others emphasize wider political upheaval across the Caucasus. The evidence remains incomplete. The ruins offer only fragments, never the whole story. Modern archaeological surveys continue identifying buried walls, streets, and ceremonial buildings beyond the excavated areas, suggesting that a substantial portion of the ancient capital still lies untouched beneath the surrounding fields. Every excavation uncovers something new. Another foundation, another courtyard, another piece of a forgotten kingdom. The city has not finished telling its story. Walking through Armazi today is a peaceful experience. The river still winds through the valley below. The mountains stand unchanged on the horizon. Wildflowers grow where royal halls once stood. Only scattered stones remain visible. Yet beneath the quiet landscape rests the capital of a kingdom that once balanced between 2 great empires. Watching, waiting, as it has for centuries. Perhaps that is what makes Armazi so remarkable. Not simply that it was a royal capital. History remembers many capitals, but that this forgotten city stood at one of the ancient world's greatest crossroads, where Roman influence met Persian ambition and local traditions shaped a kingdom unlike any other. The kings are gone. The palaces have vanished. The walls have fallen. Yet beneath the fields of Georgia, the forgotten capital still waits. Silent, patient, keeping the memory of an ancient kingdom hidden in the shadow of the Caucasus Mountains, where history still sleeps beneath the earth.